reflect how a writer's imagination takes hold of real events and makes them better in the telling over years of retelling. In editing our transcripts, my philosophy was to let Pat be Pat on the page as he was in our interviews, because this kind of book should provide a warts-and-all portrait of a character, along with the gaffes and all narrative of his life, as straight from the horse's mouth as feasible. My responsibility is to share what he told me, because this represents what listeners would have heard for themselves if they had met Pat at Griffin Market or sat with him on his balcony as he told stories. And this is the purpose of the book. Instead of hewing literally to any factual record, an oral biography is designed to convey many other kinds of truths about character and voice. What's in this book offers a glimpse into Pat Conroy's psyche and the emotional reality he lived with from day to day, year to year. Here is Pat's philosophy on the subject of his own nonfiction, including the interviews we recorded for this book. In memoir, you better make sure you're dealing with the truth as best you can tell it, as best you can carve it out, as best you can remember it. The problem is, once it's in a book, it's going to sound like the whole truth, and it's not going to be. It's the truth as best I can put it together. But it's not going to be the whole truth, because everybody's version of what happened is a little different. And it's not going to be the literal truth, because I don't have a recording of my life. He also noted, my answers can change on a daily basis. I can say something portentous as though I'm giving the final benediction on something, and then I will say something completely different the very next day. Memoirist and novelist Pat Conroy was also a raconteur who delighted audiences, as well as friends and family, with his storytelling. Not every writer is a great raconteur, just as not every raconteur has the ability to be a good writer. In fact, the first oral biography in which I collaborated came into being because the black midwife, Oni Lee Logan, did not know how to write. On the other hand, she was a great storyteller out of the oral tradition of the African-American South, in which knowledge and information are stored and passed down through stories, told and repeated over generations. The Capote-esque, bon vivant Eugene Walter, of the second oral biography I worked on, was a good writer who produced a few novels and poems, but these did not come close to his brilliance as a raconteur, whose stories captured the brilliance of a uniquely well-lived life. Likewise, great writers are often not great talkers. William Faulkner, for example, was notorious for being taciturn in public and speaking only in monosyllables. He preferred to listen and observe, especially when others were doing the storytelling on the front porch of the general store or at the hunting lodge where he was a regular guest. He internalized the stories told by the raconteurs in his family and community, and later spun them into literary gold. But he himself was much more writer than raconteur. Pat Conroy was one of those rare beings whose gift with the spontaneous spoken word equaled his skill at crafting the written word. However, it is not Conroy's celebrity as an author that makes him a great subject for an oral biography. In fact, I prefer unknowns as subjects, and was initially leery of any project involving a famous person. The first two subjects of the earlier oral biographies I worked on had both done great things with their lives against huge odds, but not to the point that the world knew who they were or what they'd done. This anonymity did not bother either of them or detract from their own sense of personal success. Both individuals had a strong sense of identity that empowered them to pursue lives of great meaning and fulfillment. One lesson